This is what makes us qualitatively different from every other school in the United States, every other senior military academy, every other service academy. A single sanction honor system that is of, by, and from the student body.
Honor Court President.
Morning, General Furness, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Grant Roach. For those who don't know me, I'm the president of the Honor Court here. And this past year has been nothing shy of incredible. And I couldn't thank those that work alongside me in the Honor Court enough for all the effort they put into our system. Again, I just say that I'm a liaison between goes on and Shell Hall and you all and the superintendent staff. So without them, I couldn't do anything. We had a great vice president for education this year, Cadet Doty. He put in a ton of effort on educating the Corps and finding the times where we think core education on the honor system is imperative. The prosecution team, I couldn't thank them enough for all the effort they put into looking in and investigating every single case, finding a full picture and everything that goes on. Vice president for investigation put in great effort this year, delegating cases to our prosecution, ensuring that we have cases that are reasonable. We have cases that we believe are true honor violations. And then our vice president for defense, for those who were in the appeals meeting the other day, you know, all the work that he puts into the system, and he does everything behind the scenes, and he does probably more work when it comes down to trials and pre-trials than anybody else in the honor court. So I couldn't thank them enough. This past year, again, we worked heavily on education, and that was educating the Corps in specific classes on big events. So right before ring figure, we emphasized to the second class the importance of the honor system. This is a big milestone in their career. They get their ring, but there's other things to focus on, and honor will always be there, and there's always time for honor. And then for the first classmen, we're so close to the end, but keeping that spirit and keeping the honor system alive well beyond the walls of barracks is also important. And then for the rats, they had breakout, and once you break out, you're a member of the Corps of Cadets, and that means you still have to continue to abide by the honor system. And it's just as important as if you were a rat, and it'll be just as important for the next 3 years at VMI. And for the third classmen, although there might not be much to look forward to, they still have their ring their second class year and their diploma their first class year. So we emphasize the importance of the little milestones, but in the big picture, the honor system's always there. And it's my pleasure to introduce Aiden Pazowski. He'll be my successor as the Honor Court president. I have no doubt that he'll be able to take what we built this year and build on it much greater than everything that we could have done this year. He's a double major in physics and mathematics, and he's a Air Force scholarship recipient, and he wants to be a physicist in the Air Force. So there's no doubt with his brains that he can turn the Honor Court into something even greater than what we did this year. So again, I appreciate your guys' efforts, all the support from the alumni, the Board of Visitors, and especially superintendent staff with General Furness. He's done a phenomenal job working with us this semester and ensuring that we have all our questions answered when we have them. And he's always an open door. So we greatly appreciate that, General Furness. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, General Furness. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Like Grant said, my name is Aiden Pazowski, and I'm the rising president for the Honor Court next year. And sort of a lot of the things that we're going to do build off of this past year. So obviously, our main effort is going to be education. And obviously, we want to educate members of the Corps. And one of our biggest sort of pushes is trying to instill honor as a lifestyle and why honor matters, not just at VMI, but why it matters outside of VMI. That's going to be one of the biggest things that we push for next year. So myself and the Vice President of Education, Lucas Edwards, are going to take that head on, especially working with faculty and members of the departments here at VMI, so that this is standard across the entire board and not just something for the cadets themselves. So that's obviously going to be our biggest push, but over here we also have Mr. Gabriel Duplessis. He is our rising Vice President for Investigations. So him and our prosecution team, they've already started and continued doing a great job from the outgoing firstclassmen. They've learned a lot, and they're, again, like I said, working really hard to make sure that everything's streamlined for next year and making our process as efficient as possible. And then our Vice President for Defense, like Mr. Rose said, for everything, if you're at the appeals committee yesterday, you know all the work that goes into that, and he's already taken that role head on. Mr. Troutman's going to be he's going to do a great job in that role. So that's sort of what we're planning on doing next year, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Appeals Committee,
Thank you, Mr. President. So the appeals committee met with the outgoing president and honor education vice president of the honor court. We were also introduced to the incoming president, Mr. Pazowski, who you saw earlier at the meeting. After approving the minutes and sort of housekeeping matters, we went into a review of the appeals process under General Order 6. Colonel Timmies just wanted to make sure that we all had sort of a standard baseline of understanding of how the appeals process works and what the grounds for appeals were under General Order 6. He also apprised us that he's engaged in the periodic updating of the standard operating procedure prior honor court system and how trials are conducted, and that's going to be given to the superintendent for approval sometime, I think, this summer before our next meeting. In the course of the introduction of the new honor court officers, you get a real appreciation for just the level of commitment between learning about how the appeals process works, learning about how a trial is conducted. This is really a Herculean level of commitment on the part of the individual members of the honor court, and it's done largely behind the scenes. It's not on the fields of glory. It's not in front of the rest of the corps. It's behind the scenes. It's off hours. Mr. Pazowski is a double major in physics and math, and apparently he's not busy enough, right? Because he's also taken on this task of being the next honor court president. So you really get an appreciation, not just for the level of commitment from the cadets on the court, but Colonel Timmies, his staff, the superintendent's representative, they've got day jobs. They're all full-time professors here, and above and beyond that, he's taken this on as a collateral duty. And so we're really blessed, fortunate to have, the staff that the superintendent shares with us for this purpose, and are there to assist the cadets in running what is effectively a cadet initiative. The honor system is of by and for the cadets. I think the reason it's successful, I think most of us would agree, it's unique. It's also uniquely successful in establishing a community of trust within the barracks, within the corps, and with the alumni that benefits everyone that comes through these gates for their entire life. But it's of, by, and for the cadets. And so the assistance that they get from this rep and his staff is tremendously helpful at raising the level of professionalism, raising the level of due process. We got an overview from Colonel Timmies, and it's pretty interesting. In this academic year, which started in August of 2025, they dealt with 15 cases to date. There were 6 trials. I found it very interesting. 4 of those trials resulted in guilty verdicts. 2 of them resulted in not guilty verdicts, right? And when I was a cadet here and Mr. Northam was the honor court president, because of the concern about preserving someone's reputation and not stigmatizing them, most of what was done by the honor court, unless you were involved with the honor court, unless you were a representative of the honor court, it was invisible to you, right? The only time you ever saw action by the honor court was when someone was drummed out. You never saw when someone was acquitted, when someone's case was dismissed, for various reasons. So it was really surprising to me to look behind the numbers and see it. 6 trials out of the 15 cases, 4 were resulted in guilty verdicts, 2 resulted in not guilty verdicts. 2 of the cases, the cadet admitted guilt following a pretrial hearing and left. 2 of the cases, the cadets failed to appear for trial, were deemed guilty and left. 1 of the cases resulted in an appeal but the Board of Visitors Appeals Committee did not grant the appeal because based on the trial record and the evidence in the record, there were not sufficient grounds to grant an appeal. Right? These are the really interesting statistics right here, in my opinion. One case was dismissed by General Furness following a defense motion to dismiss, and that defense motion to dismiss was concurred upon by the prosecution. So they determined that there was a misunderstanding and that this was not an honor trial that should go forward. One case was dismissed by the general following a defense motion to dismiss. One case was dismissed by the general for adjudication by the commandant's office on his determination that it would be more appropriately handled through the commandant's process. The last one was really interesting. One case was dismissed by General Furness following a motion to dismiss from the honor court president, which was concurred upon by the prosecution. It wasn't the result of a motion to dismiss by the defense. So for me as an attorney looking at this, it just reinforced my initial impression that I got in our meeting in January, the robust level of due process afforded cadets who are accused of an honor violation, and how scrupulous the honor court itself is about ensuring that there's due process and that the process is fair and that they get an opportunity to be heard and an opportunity to mount a defense. To the point where there's even an honor court member who is his sole job description, his sole bailiwick is to be a liaison to the defense team and to help them shepherd them through the process of trying to defend their case. So I was very impressed by it. Welcome to the board. We're blessed with a lot of talent on that board. In addition to a former honor court president, Mr. Northam, right? We welcome Mr. Williamson to the committee, and Mr. Williamson's reputation in the Richmond and Henrico bar is stellar. But in addition to that, he's actually represented several cadets in front of the honor court in recent years. And so he brings a really great perspective as an attorney who is very experienced. He brings his wisdom to the committee, and I think he'll be a great resource for Colonel Timmies as he's reviewing the update to the standard operating procedures, and he can afford his insight and some of his recommendations as he sees fit. Finally, we discussed a couple of matters during the other business, and one issue kind of came up, and we had a very good conversation, and it's probably to be continued regarding the process today for a drum out. And so what in our day, when Mr. Northern and I were here, when a cadet was drummed out, their name was read out loud specifically in the barracks at 3:15 in the morning. And it had a stigmatizing effect, and it was very impactful and forceful. We had a discussion that practice has not been the case for some time, based on recommendation of counsel, that it might run us afoul of FERPA, the Federal Education Privacy Laws. We sort of canvassed the cadets that were there, what they thought about reinstituting it. They were very enthusiastic about it. They believe it would have a deterrent effect. And Colonel Timmy shared with us several examples of how problems have been created previously by the fact that when someone is actually dismissed from VMI, the Corps is not given notice that they were dismissed. And sometimes they just disappear and they go away and you never see them again. But oftentimes they hang around and come back or show up. And it's caused some problems for other cadets who've had consequences because they had no idea that this individual had been thrown out of VMI for violating our community of trust. And we're still associating with that person. So it's something we need to, I think, revisit and think about if it's something we can do. And I think it is something we can do without running afoul of FERPA and without running afoul of privacy. In the same way that when we communicate to other schools, the grounds for them leaving is for grounds sufficiently deemed to be
reason satisfactory to the superintendent.
The reason satisfactory to the superintendent is code language, but I think it clearly, if we're doing
all
that.
dismissed, so if I dismiss you for 2 alcohol ones and semester. It's the same for.
So I think calling out the name to this day, as I recollect my time in barracks, a drum out was an extremely, it left stark memories to this day. And it was very impactful. I can remember the names. It'll never again be mentioned inside the barracks to this day, 40 years on. So it's something we ought to revisit and think about, because the cadets all concurred that Mr. Kozowski thought that it has a deterrent effect. It's helpful to the rest of the Corps. It's instructive. The drum outs are educational. And we discussed that as well. So that was really the business that we discussed during the other business portion. I'm honored to be on the committee because I think this is what makes us qualitatively different from every other school in the United States, every other senior military academy, every other service academy. A single-sanction honor system that is of, by, and from the student body, that's administered by them and enforced by them, with some assistance and guidance and mentorship to ensure that due process is high value. This is the core of what as long as this doesn't change, the superficial changes that happen from decade to decade and from year to year are inconsequential by comparison to this right here. This is the secret sauce of what we do. So with that, Mr. President, that concludes my report. Questions?
If I could add to, no questions, but 2 comments. I meet with the Corps every month. We have breakfast in Shell Hall, or no, not breakfast, so lunch in Shell Hall. 2 issues that I've asked them to look at, which I think are kind of germane to the discussion. Number 1 is their education. We do a lot of training we do training now. We train people of how to deal and interact with the code. Completely appropriate, necessary, got to do it. I've asked the president, the rising president, to look at education. I've asked the dean to help the president with education. We've got professors here because we come from a society that does not treasure honor, integrity. They don't see it anywhere. They may not have, church attendance is lower. Like, how do you get your moral code embedded in your DNA? Like I say for myself, it was through my parents and the Catholic Church. And then you show up here and what we're asked to do is not too different from what you've been asked to do your whole life. That's not necessarily the case anymore. And so what we're trying to do is educate and train them so that we develop a lifelong love of honor, personal honor, integrity, ethical behavior, virtue. Where do those beliefs come from? What they're anchored on? So that will be ongoing. We're looking at on how to do that next year. The second thing, when I talk to them, and we are the only college that has a single sanction code in the United States. And so now, put every other liberal arts thing on the, but no federal service academy has a single sanction code. No other senior military college has a single sanction code. Okay. Personally, I asked, like, okay, so, like the devil's advocate, why don't we, rehabilitate people who have, fallen, I'm a Catholic, we confess and we're forgiven, and I'm counting on that deathbed one to severely. Okay. So my point being is, I've lived as a Marine, and a lot of times we're the last organization to do X. So you're on an island. And pretty soon somebody's going to ask really difficult questions about, hey, why are you on that island? And you better have a good answer, and it better not just be, well, that's just always what we've done. That won't suffice if somebody wants to change the structure of what you do. And so we're looking at, how do we message this? Because no one's asking now, but someday somebody will ask. And we got to have a good answer.
think there's a really simple and good answer. You're either honest or you're not. And that's why we have single sanction, period. Right. That's all you have to say.
And I would say, when I was a cadet, I found this before the internet, Google and all of that. Somewhere I found this quote and I taped it to the top of the blotter on my desk, and it was, honor is like an island, rugged and without a beach. Once you've left, you can never return. I wish I knew who wrote that. I guess with Google, I can figure that out now. But it really was. Now, I will also say, under the initial tutelage of Honor Court President Northam, right? I was scared to death of the Honor Court. I was scared to death of the honor system.
Still scared of me, dude.
I'm still scared of you, yes, sir. There was a line that you just didn't want to even tiptoe close to, right? But was that honor for honor's sake, right? Or was it? So
Well, that goes
when
back
you're
to
talking about
we had a
training-
Braver Angel debate about compliance or honor.
Yeah.
Are we teaching honor or teaching compliance?
Right.
And so I'm having them wrestle with these, but my point is, our alumni, our teachers, our faculty, the staff, the cadets, all have to understand and be on the same message. Why single sanction? You know, we went down to an honor conference that was hosted in the Citadel. All these, all the senior military college, federal service academies were there. Everybody loves our code. You have the best code. You have the truest honor system. But, General Bierman, who was my brother Rad from Texas A&M, he was on a panel and they asked him, you came from a single sanction code. Why don't you have a single sanction code at Texas A&M? Put him kind of on the spot. He danced off of it, as most 3-stars are able to do. But he called me and said, like, that's a really hard question to answer. And we've got to just have a good answer for it. So, and it needs to be consistent, and we all need to know what it is, because, I don't want anybody coming after us and making us go someplace where no one wants to go.
And the answer can't be the 7 famous last words, because we've always done it.
Right. I mean, I think it has to be more in depth than that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go too far. I think if you want to fill your inbox and your email account, I would question, why we're doing.
No, I don't question. We have to be able to explain.
Have an answer. Don.
So, not having gone through this great institution, and I mean it sincerely, not having the benefit of being raised by good parents in a religious home, there is many mistakes I made as a young man, for sure. And it took the Marine Corps to sort of beat the hell out of me, so I realized, oh, I got to change, otherwise I'm going to continue to suffer. So my question is this: I depend upon the students in judgment to be fair. But if a lot of your population of your students come from these kinds of homes that many of you have the blessing of coming from, the blessing that my children came from, by and large. It's sometimes not easy to walk in my boots to understand why I would be predisposed to do certain kind of activities the way I do it. Some of it is a survival instinct that you develop when you don't have the benefit of good parenting and a religious foundation and so forth. And so my only question, and I've had some of this brought up to me by others as well, just for the record, they know my background. My only question is, and I appreciate the single rule. This is all sort of new to me concept wise. I've seen some movies about it years ago as a young guy. It is the fairness. I mean, are we able to say, wait a minute, Don Hall didn't have the benefit of this, and he's just bullheaded enough. He probably didn't understand exactly why you, for one, would say this is an absolute violation of honor, because I didn't grow up in a family, and this is not about me, but it's about other young people that come here. Some of us don't even know what that means until we're much later in life. So just a general comment, food for thought.
If I may, Mr. President.
Yes.
So there's a delta, and the general's mentioned this several times this week, right? The delta between the home that he lived in before he matriculated and what the expectations were here in barracks, there was a delta, but it was not as nearly a wide a gap between where you're coming from. VMI has always been countercultural to a greater or lesser degree. And it grows more and more so, right, as the culture goes in one direction and we continue to try and hold the line in the same direction. Honor is like everything else we have to teach them when they get here. That's different. And so just saying to someone, because of where you came from, we're going to lower our expectations for you. We're not giving them the benefit of why they should be here in the first place. If VMI isn't changing, if you're not a different man or woman when you come out the back door than you were when you came in the front door, then why are we doing what we're doing?
And that's why the education and the training are so important.
So
And it's a process.
Mr. President, as a follow-up,
Well, I would echo that from a different perspective. Speaking of the Delta, and as a parent of a college student right now, as you are.
Better not be on a Saturday, but they
Amen.
graduate still.
The high school students of today, and I'm on my third and last one who's now made it to college, that talk about the delta of two-parent home, moral formation through the church, whatever was sort of the norm in the 60s and 70s, we were all growing up. Well, you can still have all of that. The delta for a typical high school student is still huge. Why? Because the toleration, if I can use that word, the acceptance of the fact that through online devices or otherwise, online class, we just cheat because everybody else is doing it, because that's the only way I'm going to get the mark, keeps me competitive. I cannot convey to you my own personal experience, how pervasive that is for all young people in America, full stop. So that is who we're matriculating. And paraphrase a football coach not named Urban Meyer, Kirby Smart, you're either elite or you're not. Well, when you come to VMI, you either adhere to the standard of don't lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate, or you don't. And ignorance is no excuse. That is seared into the brain within the first 30 seconds of signing the matriculation book and getting your rad file. And so what makes the institute in so many ways, as Bill alluded to, is that is an uncompromisable standard. And we all have to live to that standard. And frankly, it's not an easy standard to meet, but it's also not impossible. And that is what, as cadets live the life in barracks, if you don't have that standard, life in barracks is frankly impossible. So I think, Chair, you're exactly right. We're not questioning it. We have to be able to articulate it. I think a couple of us around this table had the opportunity to do that, but that is the essence of what we're talking about. I'm sorry, Don, I cut you off. Go ahead.
well, just one final comment is that I respect this system greatly. Don't misunderstand. The point I'm trying to make is that you're an inner city kid, which is what I was. And we have others that come from the same circumstances. You're smart enough to realize the Marine Corps is going to make a difference in your life, or in this case, VMI is going to make a difference in your life. You know, it's a better environment. It's going to help you get to where you want to be in life. But in my particular case, I can't speak to others, a little slow to learn sort of the rules. I picked them out. I spent 7 days in custody in boot camp. It took me a while to sort of figure out, well, that wasn't the right kind of behavior. I got to change my ways.
Hard to do for anybody.
Oh, very hard. I'm gonna get out when that happens.
He's like a unicorn to me. Sorry like that.
But my point is, and obviously my life's been very different from last time. Please, I'm not that kid 52 years ago, I promise you. But my point is, it may take me a little bit longer. And all I'm asking is, do we have built in, you're a rat and you've done some stupid stuff that gets you in front of this court. But even outside, because of what you just said, I don't have a point of reference that you assume that I have. Now, because I have to go for the honor court, I'm getting my hands slapped, or I get some other discipline, that begins the curve. That begins why I do it. What I'm hoping is that we're not impacting the newest of people early on and giving them opportunity to have other disciplines doled out so that they can learn from the process and say, okay, don't want to do that again. I've learned my lesson.
Mr. President, at the risk of belaboring it, I should have read this part of it too. The report that was given to us by Colonel Timmies, right? I think this is on point to what you're saying. Of the 15 cases that they looked at, only 4 of them were new cadets, either rats or fourth classes. 3 of them were first classmen. They've been here for 4 years.
That's different. I
Right.
get that.
So you know, if you look at it, the overwhelming majority of the 15 cases that they looked at were students that had already been here for 3 years, at least a year. They weren't first year cadets. They weren't rats. They weren't fourth classmen. So it begins, I think that's on point to your point, which is this isn't a learning curve issue for most of these 15. These are folks that had been here, and for whatever reason, we hadn't changed their perspective on honor, even after, in some cases, 3 years of trying.
The appeals case that I was involved with last year, the individual tried it 4 times on 4 different papers in AL.
Yeah.
That's Tom.
On to you.
Sorry, Tom.
Don, one thing I think it's important to recognize is the Honor Court SOP cuts a little bit of slack for rats. There is a track for education for someone. It may be a product of confusion or ignorance. And there is some discretion for the 4th year, well, again, the 4th classman, the rat on that track. So, you know, and the superintendent can
That's good.
comment on the actual implementation of it.
Can't speak, I can't remember all the dates off the top of my head, but most of those rat cases were second semester. So you don't,
They're listed as fourth classmen, so I'm assuming they're second semester.
try not to, it's not like you're drumming a, you know.
There's some
class
flex
down and all.
in the first semester.
Yeah,
But
education.
I want to make, life's not fair.
Amen.
I share a little bit of your history in terms of my exposure in high school. And everybody that comes here is different. They come from different backgrounds, different home lives. Some big problems, some come from really ideal situations. We believe that the best leaders have the best integrity. And so what we strive to achieve here at VMI is to take you in imperfect, make you similar to Marine Corps as much as we can, totally equal as rats, and then build you so that when you leave, you're as close to perfection as you can be. And that model has proved for a very long time that it works in terms of the graduates we produce. It's not perfect. I mean, we've had people that graduated here that went to prison, but the model works well. And it's probably the best thing that could happen to people that come from a bad environment to attempt to correct that imperfection that they have and the bad experiences that they've been through. If you compromise on it, it's almost like cancer. You get a little foothold. You know, if you're a little bit dishonest, then you start to rationalize that you can be more dishonest. That's our belief.
Thank you very much, Jim. And does that conclude your report?
Our report, Mr. President.
If we do need to march on, if there's anything, burn it, address it. But I think that making non-alum in particular, you know, with how the secret sauce is made, we've overrated to the entire board's advantage. Thank you for that.